Okay, tines dropping out of the tine holders on aerators. This was a big problem for me over the years as an equipment manager at 6 different golf clubs. I don't think that I ever had the luxury of a new aerator. I think all of the ones I've ever used and outfitted were used, and the tines had been replaced um, several times before I got my hands on them. And I think that had a lot to do with my experience because about a year and a half ago, I finally started paying very close attention to something that I'm going to share with you today. And before I just made this discovery, I was doing all the things that you're typically told to do: clean the threads, use new screws, um, tighten the screws with a torque wrench in a certain sequence. I had done all that, and I still had tines dropping out frequently enough to where it was a big headache. And then after I made this very simple discovery, that headache went away, and I think I had one tine drop out of an aerator after I started doing this. So here we have, I call this the clamshell type tine holder. Toro calls, and here's the tines, obviously, and Toro calls this the holder, and this they call the clamp. Okay, so here we have one that's in new condition. And most of us mechanics, what we are in the habit, we've got 3 screws here. We're in the habit of snugging these up finger tight and then starting to tighten them, starting with the one in the middle. And then we'll do 1, 2, 3, somewhat tight. Then we'll come back and do another round a little bit tighter, 1, 2, 3, and then maybe another round, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I discovered that a lot of my clamps were bowed, and the way I discovered that was I took them all and cleaned them up really good, and then laid them down on a flat surface. Okay, imagine that this is the top of a flat surface. I happen to have a surface plate, but anything that's somewhat flat is going to work. So I laid them all down, and I noticed that some of them were pretty close to flat, but some of them were not, and I could rock them from end to end like that. So I took the worst ones and did an experiment. I think I replaced a couple, but while I had those new ones on order, I started doing a little bit of experimentation, and the first thing that came to my mind was to machine this face flat. And then got to thinking about it more, and it dawned on me that that would accomplish nothing. It would be a waste of time and effort, in my opinion, because the problem here I've got one that I've simulated being machined. So I've machined the bowed face of the clamp so it's flat, straight on this one. And you can see what happens when these two half holes come in contact with these two tine shanks. The gap between the holder and the clamp is restored, so you've got a consistent gap there, but you still have a gap between the half holes out here and the tine, and that is what matters. This gap right here doesn't matter at all. Again, here's the bowed one. You've got a big gap on each end, but that gap doesn't matter. It's this gap between the half holes and the tines that is causing the problem. So I came to the conclusion that machining them would be a waste of time and effort. So I never even bothered to try that. What I did while I was waiting on the new clamps to come in was I cut some slots in this area about 2/3 of the way down through the depth. And when you're going to cut slots in something like this, you want to drill holes first so that you don't have a sharp bottom to the slot, because you could develop a crack there. So then what I did with these slotted clamps was I tightened the outside screws first, and that they came in and held the outside tines tight enough so I didn't have any more tines dropping out of those holders. And so it worked, but then I got to thinking about it more, and I came to the conclusion that that was probably unnecessary. I'm going to go back to the bowed clamp. So what I started doing after that successful experiment was I just got to thinking about how these got like this, and I figured that it was most likely it's because the previous technicians were tightening the middle screw first too tight. Once you tighten the middle screw, if you first, it's going to bow the clamp, and then you can tighten the outside screws to the same torque as the middle one, but since this is already bowed, it's not going to bring it back to a straight shape. So you can tighten this one to 20 foot-pounds, but if you do that first, you're still going to have this bow shape, and then you can tighten this one to 20 and this one to 20, and that's not going to bring it back to the shape that you need. Then you can go another round, go to 40, 40, 40, and you're going to have tines dropping, and it's going to be the outside tines that are going to be dropping. And then what happens is, here we come along cranking on these, or all of them, but especially the outside ones, because it's the outside tines that are dropping, and we over tighten these and then snap them. Okay, so I began to think of these clamps as a flexible part, the ones that were bowed. Okay, so what I began to do was tighten the outside ones first, and I made sure that I had a big gap here, because if I was to run this middle one in just finger tight and try to tighten these outside ones to restore the shape that I need, this would prevent the middle of this clamp from bowing back out. So I made sure that I had a nice big gap here, and then I started tightening the outside one first. And because I have a gap here, or if I leave this out altogether, that allows the outsides to be to bend in, and the middle is allowed to bow out a little bit. And then I snug this one down last. After I started doing that, I had no more tines dropping. I think I may have had one in an entire week, whereas before that, I would typically have at least 5 or 6 tines or more drop out in a week. And this is one of the most valuable tips that I think I can pass along. So try it, and leave me a comment, and thanks for watching.